So what does pie crust, leftover roasted veggies, chicken and bouillon have to do with each other? Well, it is now time for a long overdue episode all about pot pie. On today's episode of My Sister's Kitchen, we're going to be focusing on how to make chicken pot pie, and I'll also talk you through how to substitute ingredients if you don't have all day to make a pot pie, such as using store-bought pie crust and how to substitute canned gravy to make it simple and easy for those days you come home from work and want some comfort food. So come along with me as I show you how to make your very own homemade pot pie. Try this the best I can because we're going to spend a lot of time at the stove. And the first step we do is we make a roux. And basically by making a roux, we're starting the base of our gravy. If you do not have the time, this heated up over medium heat until it's just warm enough works, and it starts to thicken, works great for substitution if you've had a very busy day and don't have time to make this roux. This in a quick pinch or any other gravy will work. As you can see, this says turkey. This would work perfect for chicken or turkey. But today, I'm actually using a vegetable broth. You can use beef broth if you have leftover steak or roast. But for the most part, you'll need 1 can of soup broth. So starting, I'm putting the stove on about medium heat and I'm adding 1/3 cup butter. And you want that to melt in the pan. Honestly, it does not matter if you use frozen butter, room temperature butter, or butter from the fridge. You're just melting it down. Now that our butter is mostly melted, what you want to do is add your flour. This is your thickening agent. And you'll see I have garlic, salt, pepper, and parsley in here. And I'm just going to add that in. And this is the base of our roux. And I'm just stirring this because you want to stir continuously, otherwise you will burn it. So you can see the flour is soaking up all the butter. And you just want to keep stirring this until it starts to brown a little and starts to bubble. I do want to apologize for the camera angle. I am working with what I got. And I'll try and make sure to show you some of the other stuff as we're going. So as you can see, some of it is starting to brown, especially along the edges of the pan. So what I like to do is turn down the heat to low because I'm adding 1 can of vegetable broth I actually made from bouillon, and I filled it. So this is a 2-cup measuring cup. I also added milk up to the 2-cup line. Now I'm just gonna pour it slowly. You just want to keep stirring so nothing burns. The other thing is, when you pour this in, be aware that since this is a gravy, your chances are it's going to be lumpy at first, but you can work the lumps out as you're mixing them. Now I'm going to turn the heat back up to medium, and I'm going to keep going till the lumps are worked out and it starts to thicken and bubble. And as you can see, right here, you see all the spices and everything and just how pretty that gravy looks. You want to make sure that you prepare your bottom pie crust in advance when you're making your pie crust, or even the store-bought. Make sure to put the bottom one in first. That way you're not dealing with rushing around, especially on the gravy part, because you need to constantly stir this to prevent lumps and from burning your gravy inside the pan. Hello up there! As you can see, my gravy is starting to thicken. It's not as quote-unquote liquidy. It is starting to thicken, and it smells really good. So to this, once it gets thick, I have roasted chicken that I made this morning, But you could use leftover turkey from turkey dinner, leftover chicken, leftover roast. You could use all sorts of leftover meats. I have not tried pot pie with lamb, to make it anyways, with lamb or with pork, so I do not know how those would turn out. But if you were to do that, I would suggest using a vegetable broth for that. That way you don't get weird flavor combinations when it comes to like pork with beef. But if you don't have that, and what you have is chicken broth or bone broth or beef broth, go ahead and use it and let me know how it tastes. The other thing I have is I roasted potatoes and carrots last night in the oven, and I cut the leftovers up into bite-sized pieces this morning, and I threw in some corn, and that also will go into the pot pie. So here you can see that the roux is bubbling. You actually want to let it bubble and quote unquote boil. There we go. Bubble and boil for about a minute before you remove it off the heat and add your chicken and add your vegetables. So after that minute is up, I'm going to show you guys how I add my meat and veggies. As you can see, I have removed it from the heat. I'm going to add my chicken, and that's just seasoned with pepper. Nothing special because there are seasonings added to my gravy. Give that a good stir. And next, I'll add my vegetables. And I used to be intimidated by making pot pie, but then I learned how to prep and stage my ingredients, and that made it a whole lot easier to make this. Now I'm just gonna stir it up, make sure everything's nice and coated. As you can see, everything is getting nice and coated. And let's go put it in our pie crust. So we have our pie crust set up, and now I'm just gonna pour in our veggies and our chicken. Technically, you're only supposed to use 2 cups of meat and 10 ounces of vegetables. I tend to go over that, but that's okay. Because you can throw, if you have leftover like this, you can throw that on top of rice or pasta noodles that you've prepared or leftovers. Basically have a yummy snack for leftovers. Now I'm just gonna smooth this out. Smells delicious too. So now we'll add our top pie crust. So when it comes to the top pie crust, have it rolled out and placed on a piece of parchment paper or wax paper or whatever you need beforehand. If you made it by hand, that way it's easier to put it on the pie. The other thing you want to do is, if you have a store-bought one or one that you've made from scratch, what I like to do is try and center and just cut a couple of slits into your pie crust. That way, as it's baking, steam has a chance to escape and it won't bubble over while it's baking. And then I also know that when I put this on top, so I can use these as a guide to continue to poke through once it's on top of my pie. So I'm gonna take this, holding onto the pie crust as well because it is loose, and just plop it right on there. Ta-da! Pie crust. Now I'm just gonna kind of pull it a little bit, kind of open up some of those steam vents. Open up some of those steam vents. Vents. Dear Lord, words are hard today. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm gonna take some of the extra pie crust off. Just kind of cut it. You can always take extra pie crust. Some people like to cut shapes into their pie crust. Some people like fancy pie crust. But if you're like me, I don't know how to do fancy pie crust. Not because I don't want to try, but part of it is I am just kind of lazy and don't really want to take the time and the effort to do it. Now, if I was making this for company, sure, I would totally make it just because I could. You don't have to. Next, I'm just gonna tuck the dough, kind of push it along the side of the edge, try and seal up the bottom pie crust with the top one as best as I can. Because if you have a weak spot, that's where it's gonna bubble out, spill the gravy all over inside your oven. And if you don't have a tray underneath your pot pie, it's gonna make your oven stink until you clean it. There. Now we have a beautifully made pot pie crust. So from here, we will preheat our oven to 425 and bake it for 35 to 40 minutes. So I'm baking the pot pie. There's about 24 minutes left. 425, let's see how it looks. Woo, that looks nice. It's not touching the top burner, so we're good. Probably when it's about halfway done cooking, which I put it on for 35 minutes. So it's a little over halfway through the cook time, and I'm going to pop this guy out. I'm going to rotate. Woo, good thing I did, look at that. It's starting to get golden brown there, and those steam vents are coming in handy. So I'll put it back in and let it continue to cook. But pot pie is literally you're cooking the pie crust. Everything else should be cooked. But as you can see, this pie crust is nice and golden brown. Don't mind the tippy taps, it's my terrier. Anyways, so the pie is done. It is golden brown. It looks flaky. It looks delicious. And I'm gonna let this sit for about 10 minutes before I cut into it. So one, I don't burn myself, and two, it gives time for the gravy to set so it's not as runny when you cut in. Now that the pot pie has had a chance to set, I cut it into slices, and now it's time to try it. So normally I make a pie crust using butter, flour, and water, but this is a different type of pie crust, so I'm really excited to try this one out. So I got a chunk of chicken and some pie crust and some corn and some potato, and now it's time to try it. The pie crust isn't as flaky. I think just because I used butter instead of shortening or lard for the recipe in the pie crust that it calls for. But other than that, this is a very, very delicious pie crust. And overall, I'd say this pot pie is probably 9 out of 10. I'd probably do a couple things different with it, like add green beans to it. Other than that, it's the perfect way to end a rainy day or whatever type of day you've had. But remember, eat up. Okay, be honest. How does the pot pie taste?
It's really good. I like this crust.